The market stank of fear. Ji-ho knew the smell well now, after 3 months in captivity. It clung to his fellow humans like a second skin as they huddled in their cages. Next lot, called the auctioneer, a 6-limbed creature with purple scales that shimmered under the harsh lights. Human male. Good condition. Strong back. Good hands. Ji-ho was pulled from his cage by 2 guards. His wrists hurt from the metal bands. He did not fight. Fighting only made things worse. He had learned that on day 1. The other aliens watched him from their viewing platforms. Some had eyes like insects. Others had no eyes at all. To Ji-ho, they were still strange, even after months among them. The aliens called themselves the Dominion, a group of advanced species who ruled this part of space. And they saw humans as animals. This one has training in mechanical repair, the auctioneer said. Previous owner says he fixed 3 ship engines. Bidding starts at 50 credits. Ji-ho kept his eyes down. He had been an engineer on Earth before the alien ships came. Before they took thousands of humans as specimens and labor resources. Before his life became this nightmare. 60 credits, called a voice from the crowd. 70, said another. Ji-ho did not look up, but he counted the voices. 5 bidders. Then 4. Then just 2. 120 credits, said a clear female voice. It was different from the others, smoother, more confident. Sold. The auctioneer seemed pleased. A fine price for Commander Hana. Ji-ho finally looked up. The alien approaching him walked on 2 legs, like a human. Her skin was pale blue, and her hair was white as snow, pulled back tightly from her face. Her eyes were large and silver, with no pupils. She wore a uniform with many badges and symbols Ji-ho didn't understand. Commander Hana circled him slowly, examining him like a machine part. You there, human. Do you understand basic speech? Ji-ho nodded. Yes, Commander. He spoke carefully, the way the guards had taught him. I hear you are good with machines. Is this true, or did they lie to increase your price? Her voice was cold, but not cruel. Just curious. I was an engineer. For 10 years, I can fix most mechanical and electrical systems. Ji-ho kept his answers short. Aliens didn't like when humans talked too much. Commander Hana made a sound, perhaps a laugh. We'll see. The last human I bought claimed similar skills and failed at basic tasks. She turned to an aide beside her. Process the payment and prepare him for transport. Full decontamination, new clothes, and fit him with a standard neural collar. The aide nodded. And his designation, Commander. Hana looked at Ji-ho again, studying his face. What were you called before human? Ji-ho. Then that will do. No need for a number. If he proves useful, I may keep him for some time. As the guards led Ji-ho away, he heard Commander Hana speaking to someone else. Yes, Admiral Q. I did just purchase another human. The stories of their problem-solving abilities intrigue me. A waste of credits, a deep voice replied. These creatures barely understand basic technology. They're good for simple labor at best. Perhaps, Commander Hana said. But this one has interesting eyes. There's calculation behind them. And didn't you just complain about the engineering failures on your flagship? Maybe a different perspective is exactly what we need. Ji-ho kept his face blank as they pushed him through a decontamination chamber. Inside, he felt a small spark, not of hope, but of opportunity. Commander Hana had seen something in him. She thought he might be useful. And useful things gained access. Access to tools, to information, to systems. For the first time since his capture, Ji-ho allowed himself to think beyond survival. Maybe, just maybe, this was the first step towards something more. The neural collar felt heavy around Ji-ho's neck. It was a slim band of metal, but its weight was more than physical. With it, Commander Hana could control his movements and even cause pain if he disobeyed. Stand there, she ordered, pointing to a spot beside her chair. And do not speak unless I ask you a question. Jai-Ho stood quietly as 5 alien officers entered Commander Hannah's private meeting room aboard her ship. The room was large and cold, with walls that seemed to shine from within. The furniture was all curves and strange angles, uncomfortable for human bodies. "Commander Hannah," said one of the visitors, tall with skin that shifted colors like oil on water. "We hear you have a new pet." Hannah smiled. "Not a pet, Admiral Q. A tool. Humans have certain skills that might be useful." Admiral Q made a noise that might have been a laugh. "Show us, then. What can your human do?" Commander Hannah turned to Jai-Ho. "The device on the table is broken. Fix it." Jai-Ho moved to the table where a small cube sat. It had panels on each side with strange markings. He had never seen anything like it before. "You have 2 minutes," Hannah added. The alien visitors watched with what seemed like amusement in their strange eyes. Jai-Ho felt sweat on his forehead. He picked up the cube, turned it in his hands. One panel was darker than the others. He pressed it gently, and the cube hummed. Good. Power source still worked. He tried pressing other panels. Nothing happened. Jai-Ho closed his eyes for a moment, thinking. The humming had a pattern. Not steady, but up and down, like it was trying to connect to something. 1 minute left, Hannah said coldly. Jai-Ho looked around the room. On Hannah's desk was another device with the same markings. He walked toward it. "I did not say you could move," Hannah said sharply. The collar tightened, and Jai-Ho felt a sting of pain. "The cube," Jai-Ho managed to say through clenched teeth. "It pairs with that." He pointed to the desk device. Hannah paused, then nodded. "Continue." Jai-Ho brought the cube near the desk device. Both began to glow. He placed the cube on top of the desk device, aligned symbols that matched. The cube opened like a flower, revealing a hologram of star maps. "Interesting," said Admiral Q. "But anyone could have figured that out." "Let's try something harder," said Hannah. She tapped commands into her wrist panel. The ship's water recycling system has been operating at 82% efficiency for 3 days. The engineers cannot find the problem. "Human, look at this diagram and tell me what you see." A hologram appeared in the air. Jai-Ho studied it carefully. It was a system like nothing on Earth, but fluid dynamics were the same everywhere. He spotted the issue quickly. "This valve," he said, pointing. "It's restricting flow. And this filter is installed backward." The room went quiet. Commander Hannah checked her wrist panel again. "Interesting. He's correct." Admiral Q snorted. "Lucky guess." "Maybe," said Hannah. "But luck is a resource too." She turned to her visitors. "Shall we make a game of it? Each of you can present a problem. If my human solves it, you owe me a favor. If he fails, I owe you one." Jai-Ho kept his face blank, but inside he burned with anger. A game. A toy. That's all he was to them. For hours, they tested him with puzzles and problems. Jai-Ho solved most of them. Each time he succeeded, Hannah looked more pleased. Each time he failed, the collar gave him pain. But with each new problem, Jai-Ho learned more about Dominion technology. And when no one was watching, he studied how the neural collar worked. Its programming, its power source. Knowledge was power, and Jai-Ho was gathering it piece by piece. 3 weeks had passed since Jai-Ho became Commander Hannah's property. Each day was the same. Solve problems, endure mockery, learn what he could about Dominion technology. Today was different. Commander Hannah was taking him to a research facility. "You will not speak," she told him as they boarded her private shuttle. "You will stay 2 steps behind me at all times. If anyone asks about you, I will answer." Jai-Ho nodded. The neural collar felt looser today. He had discovered that when Hannah was pleased with his work, the collar's grip weakened slightly. He had been very useful lately. The research facility orbited a red planet. It was huge, a ring of metal with thousands of lights. Inside, many different alien species worked at strange machines. Commander Hannah, greeted a thin alien with 4 arms. "Welcome to Research Station 7. I am Director Suk. We are honored by your inspection." Hana nodded. "Show me the new weapon system." As they walked through the station, Jiho kept his eyes down, but his mind alert. He noticed things, small things, the way some power cables were connected wrong, how cooling systems were working too hard, warning lights that everyone ignored. They entered a large room filled with what looked like giant guns pointed at targets. "Our latest defense technology," said Director Suk proudly. "These ion cannons can disable any ship's engines without destroying the vessel." Jiho saw it immediately. The power flow was wrong. The cooling system was not enough for weapons this size, but he stayed quiet, 2 steps behind Hana. Director Suk pressed a button. A demonstration. The lights dimmed. The cannons hummed. Then a loud crack sounded, and all the lights went out. "What happened?" Hana demanded. Emergency lights came on, casting red shadows everywhere. "Power overload," said Director Suk, panic in his voice. "The main grid is failing." "Fix it," Hana ordered. "The engineers are trapped in the lower levels," said an aide, rushing in. The automatic doors sealed when power failed. Alarms began to sound. The air felt hotter. "The cooling systems are down," said Director Suk. "The reactor could become unstable." Jiho couldn't stay quiet anymore. "Commander," he said softly. Hana turned, anger on her face. "I told you not to speak." "The power flow is reversed," Jiho said quickly. "The surge protectors are connected to output lines, not input. I can fix it." Hana stared at him. The station shook slightly. "Commander, we need to evacuate," said Director Suk. Hana made her decision. "Show me," she said to Jiho. Jiho moved quickly to a control panel. The alien writing was strange, but the diagrams made sense to him. He pointed to a screen. "Here, and here. The power is flowing backward through these junctions. It needs to be rerouted." "How?" demanded Hana. Jiho's fingers moved over the controls. "Manual override. Shut down sectors 3 through 7. Redirect power from the auxiliary systems. Reset the surge protectors." Director Suk looked shocked. "That would leave us defenseless." "Better defenseless than dead," Jiho said. Hana nodded to him. "Do it." Jiho worked fast. His hands remembered things his mind didn't know. Engineering was engineering, even when the technology was alien. He rerouted power flows, bypassed damaged sections, created new pathways. The alarms stopped. The lights came back on. The station stopped shaking. Director Suk stared at Jiho. "How did a human understand our systems?" Hana smiled coldly. "My property is well trained." She turned to leave, then spoke to the director. "Your engineers made basic mistakes. I suggest better quality control in the future." Back on the shuttle, Hana looked at Jiho with new eyes. "You saved many lives today." Jiho lowered his gaze. "I solved a problem. That's what you bought me for." "Yes," said Hana, "but I'm beginning to think I got more than I paid for." Later, in his small quarters, Jiho lay awake thinking. Today, he had learned something important. The Dominion's technology was advanced, but their understanding of it was flawed. They built what they didn't fully understand. And that was a weakness he could use. "You will accompany me to the meeting," Commander Hana told Jiho one morning. "The Vrek have requested peace talks after 3 years of border fighting." Jiho nodded. In the 2 months since the incident at the research station, Hana had kept him closer. She no longer displayed him at parties like a pet. Instead, she used his skills more privately. "Who are the Vrek?" he asked. The neural collar still limited his speech, but Hana allowed him more questions now. "Dangerous, aggressive, not part of the Dominion." Hana checked her uniform in a mirror. "They attacked our outposts without warning. Now they claim they want peace." The meeting would take place on a neutral space station. As they traveled there on Hana's ship, Jiho noticed she seemed tense. The Vrek language is difficult, she said. Our translation devices often make mistakes. When they arrived, Jiho stayed behind Hannah as always. The meeting room was large, with a round table in the center. On one side sat Dominion officials, including Admiral Q. On the other side were the Vrek. Jiho had never seen aliens like them. They were tall and thin with gray skin that looked like stone. Their eyes were small and dark. Instead of mouths, they had small moving parts that clicked when they spoke. Admiral Q started the meeting. We welcome the Vrek delegation and hope for productive discussions. The translator device in the center of the table hummed. The Vrek leader responded, and the device translated. We come to finish this conflict with final solutions. The Dominion officials looked alarmed. Admiral Q frowned. That sounds like a threat. The Vrek leader clicked rapidly. The translator said, we do not threaten. We seek ending. Ending of what? Asked Hannah sharply. More clicking. Ending of misunderstanding through force. Admiral Q stood up. This is pointless. They're threatening war while pretending to want peace. Jiho had been watching the Vrek carefully. Their body language didn't match the translated words. They seemed calm, not aggressive, and the clicking sounds had patterns. Commander, Jiho whispered, I think the translator is wrong. Hannah glared at him. Be silent. Please, Jiho insisted. The patterns in their speech. I think I can. Silence. Admiral Q shouted, Commander Hannah, control your human or remove it. The Vrek were watching Jiho now. Their leader made a series of clicks directly at him. Jiho stepped forward, despite the caller's pressure. Commander, they're not threatening you. The translator is missing context. The meeting room went silent. Then Hannah made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. What do you mean? She asked Jiho. Their language has mathematical patterns. The clicks are like equations. The translator is converting the words but missing the meaning. Jiho pointed to the Vrek leader. They're not saying ending through force. They're saying conclusion through understanding. The Vrek leader nodded slowly. More clicks. Jiho listened carefully. They say their species communicates through concepts, not just words. Our translator doesn't capture that. Admiral Q scoffed. This is ridiculous. But Hannah raised her hand. Let him try. She turned off the translator. For the next hour, Jiho worked with the Vrek, developing a simple system of hand signals and drawings to supplement their clicks. Slowly, understanding grew. By the end of the day, the Vrek and the Dominion had the beginnings of a peace agreement. The misunderstanding had been in translation all along. As they returned to Hannah's ship, she was quiet. Finally, she spoke. You may have prevented a war today. Jiho nodded. I just listened differently. That night, for the first time, Hannah loosened his neural collar significantly. You have earned this small freedom, she said. As she left his quarters, Jiho touched the collar gently. Something had changed today. For the first time, Hannah had seen him not as property, but as someone who could do what she could not. It was the beginning of a connection. And perhaps an opportunity. 3 months after the Vrek peace talks, alarms blared through Commander Hannah's ship. Jiho woke instantly. His neural collar was now loose enough that he could sleep comfortably. All officers to command center, said a voice over the speakers. This is not a drill. Jiho waited in his quarters. He was not an officer. But 10 minutes later, Hannah herself came to his door. Come with me, she said. Her face was tight with worry. In the command center, screens showed red warnings. Officers rushed around, shouting orders. Admiral Q's face appeared on the main screen. It's spreading to all systems, the Admiral said. 6 defense stations are already down. 3 planets have lost all communications. What is happening? Jiho asked quietly. Hannah's silver eyes were dark with fear. Something is attacking our network. a virus or program we've never seen before. It shuts down systems, takes control of weapons, turns off life support. On the screens, Juho saw Dominion ships drifting in space, stations with no lights, planets going dark. "Our best engineers can't stop it," said Admiral Q. "It adapts too quickly. It's like it knows our systems better than we do." Jiho looked at the data scrolling across the screens. He recognized patterns. "May I?" he asked, pointing to a control panel. Admiral Q noticed him for the first time. "What is that human doing in the command center?" But Hana ignored him. "Show me what you see," she said to Jiho. Jiho studied the code. "This is familiar," he said slowly. "On Earth, we had similar attacks. We called them worms, self-replicating programs that spread through networks." "Earth technology is primitive," scoffed an officer. "This is far more advanced." "The principle is the same," Jiho insisted. "It finds a weakness, exploits it, copies itself, and moves on." Hana turned to her officers. "Let him work." For hours, Jiho tracked the virus through the Dominion network. The more he studied it, the more familiar it seemed. It used techniques he recognized from Earth's computer history, but at a scale and speed he had never seen before. "It's targeting your defense systems first," he told Hana. "Then communications, then life support. It's methodical." "Can you stop it?" she asked. Jiho thought carefully. "Not completely. But I might be able to slow it down. Create a firewall of sorts." "Do it," Hana ordered. With Hana's authorization, Jiho accessed the ship's core systems. He had never been allowed this deep before. He saw how the Dominion's networks were structured, how their security worked, and how many flaws it had. As he worked to create barriers against the virus, he stored everything he learned in his memory. Knowledge was power. "There," he said finally. "I've isolated our ship's critical systems. The virus can't reach life support or engines now." Hana studied the results. "Can you do this for other ships? For the defense stations?" "Yes," Jiho said. "But I need full access to the central network." Admiral Q's face appeared again on the screen. "Absolutely not. Giving a human access to our core systems is..." "Is what?" Hana interrupted. "Our only hope. Look at your screen, Admiral. 3 more planets have gone dark while we argue." The Admiral fell silent. "I'll take full responsibility," Hana said. She turned to Jiho. "Do what you need to do." As Jiho worked, he discovered something strange. The virus seemed to be avoiding certain systems that controlled prison camps and labor facilities, places where humans were kept. He said nothing about this to Hana. But as he built defenses against the virus, he left small openings, pathways that only he knew about. The crisis was terrible for the Dominion. But for Jiho, it was an opportunity he had waited for since the day he was captured. 2 weeks after the virus attack, Jiho had new privileges. He had his own small room with a workstation. His neural collar was set to its lowest setting. He could move freely in certain areas of Hana's ship. "A High Council wants to meet you," Hana told him one morning. "Your work saved many lives." Jiho nodded. "I only did what was needed." "The virus is still out there," said Hana. "But your barriers are holding. No new systems have been infected for 3 days." As they walked through the ship, Jiho noticed how the other aliens looked at him now. Not with disgust, but with curiosity and sometimes fear. In his new position, Jiho had discovered something important. Humans were not the only species the Dominion treated badly. There were dozens of lesser races, kept as workers, servants, and test subjects across many planets. During his work to fight the virus, Jiho had found ways to access secure files. He learned about labor camps on cold moons, research facilities where living beings were used for experiments, and prison worlds where entire populations were kept. At night, when the ship was quiet, he used the pathways he had created to send messages to other humans in the Dominion. Short, simple codes that wouldn't be noticed. At first, just to see if anyone would answer. Someone did. "My name is Ta," came a reply 3 days later. "I work in a data center on Station 12. Over several nights, Jeho learned that Tay was also using the virus crisis to gain more access. Together, they built a secret network of human captives across Dominion space. "We are now connected to humans on 15 stations and 3 planets," Tay reported a week later. "Good," Jeho replied. "Remember, do nothing yet. Just watch and learn." When he wasn't building his hidden network, Jeho worked with Hannah to strengthen defenses against the virus. She spent hours with him now, asking questions, listening to his ideas. Sometimes she even smiled at his jokes. "Why did you become an engineer?" she asked him once. "I liked fixing things," Jeho said. "Making broken things work again." "Is that what you're doing with the Dominion? Fixing us?" There was no anger in her voice, just curiosity. Jeho was careful with his answer. "Your technology is amazing, but there are flaws in how you use it." Hannah nodded slowly. "Like how we treat other species." The question surprised him. He looked at her closely. "Yes, like that." "I've been reading reports from Earth," she admitted. "Your people achieved much with limited resources. Perhaps we were too quick to judge your species as primitive." Jeho said nothing, but hope stirred inside him. Could Hannah be changing? The next day, Admiral Q visited Hannah's ship. While they met in her office, Jeho worked nearby on a security upgrade. He could hear their conversation. "The human has too much freedom," Q said angrily. "He's accessing restricted information." "With my permission," Hannah replied. "He needs that access to find weaknesses the virus might exploit." "I've been monitoring his work," said Q. "Last night he accessed files about labor camps on Sector 7. Jeho's heart beat faster. He had been careful, but not careful enough. "I authorized that." Hannah lied smoothly. "We're checking all facilities for virus activity." After Q left, Hannah called Jeho to her office. Her face was serious. "Are you planning something I should know about?" she asked directly. Jeho met her eyes. "I'm trying to understand the Dominion better, to help fight the virus." Hannah studied him for a long moment. "Be careful where you look, Jeho. Some doors are better left closed." He understood the warning, and the fact that she had protected him from Q. That night, Jeho sent a message to Tai. "We need to move faster. They're watching." His plan was taking shape, but now there was a complication. Hannah herself. "We have a problem," Commander Hannah said as she entered Jeho's work area. "Defense Station 5 is under attack." Jeho looked up from his screen. "The virus again?" "No. Real ships, unknown origin." Hannah's face was grim. "We've been ordered to defend the station." Within an hour, Hannah's ship was racing through space. Jeho stood on the bridge, watching the stars blur past. Normally, he would not be allowed here during battle, but Hannah wanted him nearby in case of technical problems. "We'll reach the station in 10 minutes, said a pilot. On the main screen, they could see the station, a massive ring-shaped structure. Small ships darted around it, firing weapons. "Who are they?" Jeho asked. "We don't know," said Hannah. "Their ships match no known design." As they drew closer, Jeho felt his heart race. This was the moment he had been planning for weeks. He had known about the attack before Hannah did. He had helped plan it. The attacking ships were piloted by humans and other enslaved species. They had taken control of small Dominion vessels from various outposts, using access codes Jeho had discovered. "Prepare to engage," Hannah ordered. Jeho took a deep breath. Now or never. He pressed a hidden command on his work panel. Across the Dominion fleet, on every ship and station where humans wore neural collars, the collars suddenly powered down. "What's happening?" Hannah asked as warning lights flashed across her ship's control panels. "Neural control systems are offline," reported an officer. "All of them. Everywhere." Hannah turned to Jeho. In her eyes, he saw understanding and betrayal. "You did this," she said softly. Jai-Ho nodded. "I'm sorry, Hana." All around them, chaos erupted. On the station in the fleet, across the Dominion, humans and other enslaved species were suddenly free. Many had been waiting for this signal. They took control of ships, weapons, and systems. "Commander," called an officer, "we're receiving a message from the attacking ships." "Show me," Hannah said, her voice cold. The screen changed to show a human face. Ta, Jai-Ho's secret ally. "Attention Dominion forces," Ta said. "We do not wish to destroy you. We only want our freedom. Stand down, and no one will be harmed." Admiral Q's face appeared on another screen. "This is treason. Commander Hana, arrest your human immediately." Hana looked at Jai-Ho. "Did you plan all of this?" "Not alone," Jai-Ho said. "There are thousands of us. We've been waiting for the right moment." Hana's officers moved toward Jai-Ho, weapons ready, but Hana raised her hand to stop them. "Let him speak," she ordered. Jai-Ho stepped forward. "The Dominion took us from our homes, made us slaves. But we never stopped being people. We never stopped thinking and planning." He turned to a screen showing the command center of the station, where humans and other species stood together, free. "We don't want war," Jai-Ho continued. "We want recognition. The right to live as equals. The right to go home." Admiral Q's face twisted with rage. "This is the greatest security breach in Dominion history. Commander Hana, you are responsible for this disaster." Hana stood very still. "Yes, I am," she said finally. "I failed to see what was right in front of me. A person, not property." She turned to Jai-Ho. "What happens now?" "That depends on you," Jai-Ho said. "We control enough ships and stations to defend ourselves, but we'd rather find peace." Hana looked at the screens showing battles across Dominion space. Then she made a decision that would change everything. "Stand down," she ordered her crew. "All weapons offline." Admiral Q shouted in anger, but Hana cut his transmission. "I choose to see the truth," she said to Jai-Ho, "even if it costs me everything." 3 days after the rebellion began, Hana sat alone in her quarters. She was no longer a commander. Her rank had been stripped away by the Dominion High Council. Traitor, they had called her. Failed commander who allowed a human to corrupt Dominion systems. A soft knock came at her door. Jai-Ho stood there, no longer wearing his neural collar. "May I come in?" he asked. Hana nodded. It was strange to see him move so freely, to speak without hesitation. "The council has ordered your execution," Jai-Ho said quietly. "Tomorrow at dawn." Hana showed no surprise. "I expected nothing less. The Dominion cannot allow others to see a high-ranking officer side with slaves." "You're not staying for the execution," Jai-Ho said. Hana looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "I'm here to help you escape." Hana stared at him. "Why would you help me? After everything I did to you?" Jai-Ho sat down across from her. "Do you remember when you asked why I became an engineer? I said I liked fixing broken things." "I remember." "The Dominion didn't break because of you," Jai-Ho said. "It was broken already. It just took someone like you to see it." Hana shook her head. "I treated you like property, like a toy." "Yes," Jai-Ho agreed. "But you also listened when it mattered. You chose to see me as a person in the end." From his pocket, Jai-Ho pulled out a small device. "This will disable the security systems in this section for 5 minutes. There's a small ship waiting in Bay 4. It's programmed to take you to a neutral zone." Hana looked at the device. "The Dominion will hunt me forever." "Maybe," Jai-Ho said, "but they'll have other problems to worry about first." "What do you mean?" "The rebellion is spreading. More ships defect every hour. The Vrek have offered support. Even some Dominion officers are questioning the system." Hana was silent for a long moment. "Where will you go, Jai-Ho?" "Back to Earth." "Not yet," he said. Earth is still rebuilding after the Dominion's attacks. I'm needed here first. To fight. Jai-Ho shook his head. To build. To fix what's broken. We don't want to destroy the Dominion. We want to transform it. Hannah looked at him with new eyes. When I first saw you in that market, I thought I was buying a clever tool. I never imagined that I would become your greatest threat. Jai-Ho smiled slightly. Neither did I. A distant alarm sounded. Jai-Ho stood up. We need to go. Now. As they moved through the dark corridors of the ship, Hannah asked, Why are you really helping me? Your people would call this justice. Jai-Ho stopped and looked at her. On Earth, we had a saying. Judge each person by their actions, not by their group. You chose to stand down. You chose peace when you could have fought. That matters to me. They reached the small ship. Jai-Ho quickly entered codes to unlock it. Where should I go? Hannah asked. There's a small outpost on the edge of Freck space, Jai-Ho said. Others like you are gathering there. People who want change. And if I choose to return to the Dominion, to fight against you. Jai-Ho's eyes were calm. That's your choice. Freedom means making your own decisions, even wrong ones. Hannah started to board the ship, then turned back. When I bought you, I thought I was getting a servant. Instead, I got a teacher. Jai-Ho nodded. And I learned from you too. About courage. About change. Alarms blared louder now. Go, Jai-Ho urged. As Hannah's ship disappeared into the darkness of space, Jai-Ho returned to the command center where Tai and other leaders of the rebellion waited. Did she go? Tai asked. Yes, Jai-Ho said. Now we have work to do. 6 months had passed since the rebellion began. Jai-Ho stood at the window of the great meeting hall, looking out at the stars. Today would change the future of many worlds. Are you ready? Asked Tai, now his trusted friend and advisor. Jai-Ho nodded. As ready as I can be. The meeting hall had once been a Dominion command center. Now it was neutral ground. In the center was a large round table with chairs of different sizes and shapes to fit the many species who would sit there. They're arriving, said Mina, a scientist from one of the formerly enslaved races who had joined Jai-Ho's council early in the rebellion. The doors opened. First came the Dominion delegation, led by new faces. Admiral Q was gone, replaced by younger leaders who had seen the flaws in the old ways. They nodded stiffly to Jai-Ho. Next came representatives from the Freck and other independent worlds. They had supported the rebellion when they saw how the Dominion treated other species. Last came a single figure that made the room go quiet. Hannah walked in, her head held high. She wore simple clothes, not a uniform. She represented the growing number of Dominion citizens who wanted change. Welcome, Jai-Ho said to all of them. Please sit. As they settled around the table, Jai-Ho looked at each face. 6 months ago, some of these beings had been masters and others had been slaves. Now they sat as equals. We are here to sign the Treaty of New Beginnings, Jai-Ho said, a document that will change the way our peoples live together. He activated a hologram in the center of the table. The treaty appeared, written in the languages of all present. The key points, Jai-Ho continued. First, all beings are recognized as having equal rights, regardless of species or origin. The Dominion representatives shifted uncomfortably, but did not object. Second, all forced labor camps will be closed, all neural collars removed. Tai smiled at this. He had led the teams that freed thousands from those camps. Third, a new Council of Worlds will be formed, with representatives from all species. No single group will rule over others. Jai-Ho went through the rest of the treaty. Rules for trade, for travel, for resolving conflicts. By the time he finished, the room was silent with the weight of the moment. If we sign this, said the lead Dominion representative, centuries of our history will change. Yes, Jai-Ho agreed. For the better. One by one, they signed. The Vrek, the independent worlds, the formerly enslaved races, The Dominion representatives signed last, their hands moving slowly but steadily. When it was done, Jeho felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had spent months negotiating this treaty, bringing enemies together, finding common ground. As the delegates left for the celebration feast, Hannah approached Jeho. "You did it," she said. "When I bought you in that market, I never imagined this moment." Jeho smiled. "Neither did I." "What will you do now?" Hannah asked. "Return to Earth." "Soon," Jeho said. "First, I want to make sure the treaty works, that all species are truly treated equally." Hannah nodded. "I'm going to help. There are many in the Dominion who need to learn what I learned from you." "And what was that?" Jeho asked. "That greatness doesn't come from power over others," Hannah said. "It comes from how we lift each other up." They walked together to the window and looked out at the stars. "I once treated you like a toy," Hannah said softly, "and you became my greatest teacher." Jeho shook his head. "Not your greatest threat." "No," Hannah said. "A threat destroys. You built something new." As ships from many worlds flew past the window, their lights twinkling against the darkness, Jeho thought about his journey. From captive to leader, from property to peacemaker. It was only the beginning.